So I'm going to do a different podcast today. We're going to experiment for a little bit. Instead of being so formal and having PowerPoint slides and all of that, I'm going to talk a little bit. So today's an experiment. I'm going to different kind of podcast than I've done before. What I want to explore is stemming from the last podcast where we talked about the 4 intents. The first intent is commitment. It's making sure that life happens. And one of the values or patterns under commitment is my favorite. I call it the prime directive. It is what we all must do in order to truly seed ourselves back into the planet. It's what everything else does that allows the planet to exist as the one body full of thousands and trillions and billions of beings. Just as we are one body full of thousands and trillions of living beings. And that is, and this comes from Jeannie Benyus in biomimicry. And what she said was that all actions create the conditions that support life. Sounds simple, doesn't it? But it's very complex and incredibly profound. And the key piece is create the conditions. So I'd like to start this podcast by reading to you a story that Robin Wall Kimmerer tells from her Potawatomi ancestors. So in the beginning, there was the sky world where people lived, much as they do on Earth, alongside the great tree of life, on whose branches grew seeds and fruits and medicines, all the gifts of the plants on a single tree. One day, a great wind felled the tree, and a hole opened where its roots had been. When a beautiful young woman, called in our language, and forgive me if I misspoke, Giz Koswiki, or Sky Woman, ventured to the edge to look down, and she lost her footing. When she reached out to the tree to stop her fall, a branch broke off in her hand. She fell like a maple seed pirouetting on an autumn breeze. A column of life streamed from a hole in the sky world, marking her path where only darkness had been before. But in that emptiness, there were many gazing up at that sudden shaft of light. They saw there a small object, a mere dust mote in the beam. And as it grew closer, they could see that it was a woman, arms outstretched, long black hair billowing behind as she spiraled toward them. The geese nodded to one another and rose as one from the water in a wave of goose music. She felt the beat of their wings as they flew underneath and broke her fall. Far from the only home she'd ever known, she caught her breath at the warm embrace of soft feathers. And so it began. From the beginning of time, we are told that the very first encounter between humans and other beings of the earth was marked by care and responsibility, borne on the strong wings of geese. The world at that time was covered entirely by water. The geese could not hold the woman much longer, so they called a council of all beings to decide what to do. As Turtle floated in the watery gathering, he offered to let her rest on his back. The others understood that she needed land. The deep divers among them had heard of mud at the bottom of the water, and they agreed to retrieve some. One by one, the animals offered their help. The otter, the loon, the beaver, but the depth, the darkness, and the pressures were too great for even those strongest of swimmers who came up gasping. Only the little muskrat was left, the weakest diver of all. He volunteered to go, while the others looked on doubtfully. His small legs flailed as he worked his way downward. and he was gone a very long time. They waited and waited, fearing the worst for their relative. A stream of bubbles rose, and the small, limp body of the muskrat floated upward. But the others noticed that his paw was tightly clenched, and when they pried it open, there was a small handful of mud. Turtle said, "Here, spread this mud on my back, and I will hold it." Sky Woman did as Turtle asked, and then began to sing her gratitude and then to dance. And as her feet caressed the earth, the land grew and grew from the dab of mud on Turtle's back. From the branch in her hand, she seeded the earth with green, and so the earth was made. Not by one alone, but from the alchemy of two essential elements of gratitude and reciprocity. Together, they formed what we know today as Turtle Island. In the beginning of the world, the other species were our life raft, and now, in the spirit of reciprocity, we must be theirs. How does this story reflect that all actions create the conditions that support life? It does in so many ways. We think that this is as the prime directive, well, certainly great and grand, and perhaps it might be, but it's really filled with so many little things, gratitude and reciprocity among them. And we'll get to reciprocity later. But gratitude and kindness and consideration are also there. So the geese, in their kindness, saw the need and were considerate of the need of Sky Woman, needing to have her fall broken. They were also considerate of her need and gave her to Turtle to stand on because she couldn't stay in the water forever. And then the other animals, in their kindness and consideration, tried to find land for her to stand on. And the muskrat, of course, gave his life so that she would have land to stand on. It was only a pawful, a muskrat pawful, which is not very much land, but it was enough to create the earth. It's not the big things, it's the little things that create the conditions that support life. There's so much we can do. And kindness and consideration are such wonderful leaders into that land of generosity and reciprocity. It's so easy to give when you follow your heart. That first impulse, you just want to do something. If you follow it, if you just do that when that strikes, when that thought, that impulse strikes, when you feel compelled, you will indeed be creating the conditions that support life. In my work, I'm asking people to begin to discern life. It seems a simple thing, but it is not at all. Our whole society has primed us to pretend that life is not important, does not exist, can be taken for granted, or even worse, can be ignored or denied. So notice in your own life, whether you choose to embrace life, to honor life, to be grateful for life, or whether you find yourself denying it and ignoring it. Don't beat yourself up, just notice, and then choose to be different. We all are getting over habits that have been with us for generations, thousands of years. We have been separate. For thousands of years, we've not really concerned ourselves with life at all. We've been blasé, maybe, certainly taken it for granted. but more enthralled with our own self and what we can do. Not in partnership, but what we can do. We needed that ego. We needed to know who we are. We needed to know what we're capable of. And now we know that we can easily destroy life. But the other part of it is also true. We can create the conditions that support life. And actually, I find it's much more fun to do that. If you've had a garden or raised a kitten, you know a little bit about that, or had a baby. It is fun to create the conditions that support life. And it's thrilling to see that gift received by life and to see the thriving that happens when that gift is received. It kind of makes your day, actually. So that's my call, to begin to create the conditions that support life in everything you do, and to notice when you do that, and to notice when you don't, and not to beat yourself up, and don't blame yourself, and don't make yourself wrong and bad if you don't. Just notice that's an old habit that needs to change, and change it. Make a different choice at that particular time. And over time, those choices will become a way of life. And then you will begin to see lots of other things around you where you can indeed create the conditions that support life. If you're a gardener, you're kind of used to that. But it kind of depends on what kind of gardener you are. Some of us are more intent than others. I happen to be a very lazy gardener, and that's true. I am so lazy. I dig only the holes that I need to dig. I don't dig up the dirt at all. I don't put down fertilizer. I do compost. I do mulch. I don't weed. And you know what I've discovered? That actually that's a good, all those things are good. Who knew? The earth is a living system. It's a system. It's a collection of things that are all entwined together. All those life forms are talking to each other and trading things back and forth and piling things up and dispersing them over here. So when we dig up the dirt, we cut up all those connections and they have to be reformed. So I was actually pretty clever in not doing that. I just leave it there. I just put stuff over stuff. I don't dig it up ever. I put layers on top, but I don't dig down except to plant stuff. So I'll dig a hole where I put things, but that's it. And it turns out to be a good thing. So that's one way to create the conditions that support life. It's not that hard, is it? We just have to do it more often and more consistently. I'm a big proponent of living soil. Yeah, that's different than dirt. Dirt's not alive at all. And there's some real benefits to that, because when the soil is living, when it's porous, it's like a piece of bread. It has those little holes in it. When water is poured on that soil, there are holes where the water can stay. And so it stays there for a very long time. So it can nurture things for quite a while. It can help you go through droughts. It can prevent forest fires because damp things don't burn so well. So living dirt is a really good thing. And having it living creates the conditions that support life. When it's dead, when it's dirt, it's hard, it's impervious. And when water falls on it, it can't go in. There's no space, there's no place. And neither can oxygen, by the way. So anaerobic life lives in dead dirt, but aerobic life, which is live life, which is life that supports us, lives only in living soil. But when dead dirt is there and water falls on it, it can't go in, so it has to fall off. And it goes away. It doesn't nurture or support anything. So making living soil is something you can do to create the conditions that support life. Being kind creates the conditions that support life. Making people happy, making animals happy, making plants happy creates the conditions that support life. There are lots of ways that we can do it. Being gentle, saying, wow, you're lovely. Oh, it's so nice to see you. All of those things create the conditions that support life. Why wouldn't we do those? Those are nice things to do. They make us feel good. They create the conditions that support life for us too. Yeah. It's a simple thing. Very complex, very profound, I believe. And learning to see that, learning to discern when life is being supported is huge. Pick up your local newspaper and start reading an article and ask yourself, is this supporting life? Now, that doesn't mean that only happy things support life. Truth supports life. And sometimes the truth is hard. So it's not just about being nice or good or showing the better part of things. It's not that at all. It's making sure that life thrives. And only truth will do that. Lies cover up life. Lies destroy life. Destroys faith, destroys confidence, destroys trust. Trust creates the conditions that support life. And while I'm on the subject of trust, let me share with you that there's a big difference between trust and blind faith. Blind faith says, oh, yes, absolutely, I trust him. No problem. Everything's fine. But what you're really hiding is the fear of asking questions. How are you going to do that? Exactly what do you think will happen? How long do you think it will take? What do you need to be successful? These are good questions. If you're afraid to ask those questions, you're functioning on blind faith. You're afraid to know the truth. That's not trust at all. And then when it doesn't meet your expectations, and expectations are not trust either, then you feel betrayed and hurt. And you blame the other person for doing that to you, when actually you did it yourself. By not guaranteeing to yourself that you understood enough to be able to trust. You need to ask questions. You need to confirm what you need to know so that you can trust. You need to have the experiences often enough that you can trust that experience to happen again. If you've never had an experience with that person or in that situation, it is hard to have true trust because it hasn't borne fruit. It hasn't been proven. Trust is the consequence of lived experience. We offer to people a little bit of trust at the beginning, always. That's what relationships are formed on. But relationships last and deepen and become stronger when hard things have happened and you understand how it worked out. You understand the logic, you understand the experience. And even if you were hurt, you can understand why that happened. There's no blame. There's no anxiety. There's no doubt. There's no resistance, because you've been able to validate everything you need to have validated to have trust. And part of that is the experience, not trusting fully until you know that you can trust. Trust creates the conditions that support life. Honesty creates the conditions that support life. Even sometimes pain creates the conditions that support life when it shows an issue or a problem that needs to be addressed. Reframing life, trusting life. Nothing loves life more than life. Life only wants life to exist, and it wants it to thrive, to be rich and robust. So you can trust the planet. The planet wants life. You have to be wary of humans. They don't all want life, nor are we all skilled yet at creating the conditions that support life. So being a little cautious is not a bad thing. Be willing to ask questions, to prove to yourself, to assure yourself that you have the ability to trust, that you have enough information to be able to do that safely. Life creates the conditions that support life. I think that's pretty awesome. It's one of the cards in the card deck, Earth Values, the ethics of living regeneratively. And since I mentioned ethics, let me do a very short segue. So many people love ethics and values. And ethics are really our bid to be good people. That's what we want to be. We just don't know how. We don't understand how. And so ethics become rules to live by. The virtues become things to become. And there's nothing wrong with any of that unless those do not create the conditions that support life. That is the ethic. But very simply, I don't think we need another one. And I've got 16 more to share with you, or 15 more to share with you. But the patterns that the earth uses are patterns that promote life, because that's all she wants. She wants life, and she wants complex life. We're here. We are intrinsic. We are wanted. We are intended to be on this planet because we are the most complex biome on the planet outside of Mother Earth herself. That's the huge accomplishment. And I don't think we even begin to know what that's going to mean or what that could mean if we chose to work with life. That piece of us, the obnoxious piece that wants to poke and see and do that kind of stuff, that's not life enhancing. And I'm not sure why we do it, and I truly don't care. But we do have to notice when we do it and not. That's within our purview. We have the ability to do that. We all have habits that don't create the conditions that support life. And I'm along with that. I have habits that don't do that too. I can be impatient. I can be dismissive. But the point is to work not to do that, to forgive yourself and move on and begin to create the conditions that support life. To notice what needs to happen to evoke that in the person or the plant or the animal that's in front of you. Enjoy that thriving. Become enthralled by that excitement that happens when you're making life thrive, when you're doing something that supports life, it feels so good because you're supporting your own life in the process. You are life. You're no different than the plants and the animals around us, the insects too. Everything is striving for life. When we do that together, that creates a symphony. What music we can make, I think, is still to be determined. We have needed this time, I do believe, to step back and to be able to see things. That's the separate piece that we've been so enmeshed in for thousands of years. It gives us a perspective you don't get in any other way. Now, we made it our world. And if you're outside, the only thing you can do is control, is try and control and manipulate. That's all you can do. That's the only action, the only relationship you can have with what's outside of you. And we've played that game very well. We've done amazing things and learned a lot. And I don't think it's bad or wrong, but it's at its end. You can see the edges, and we don't like what we see. We have gotten to the point where those actions are now denying life, taking life, eliminating life. And I'll do a whole podcast on that at some point. So now we have to understand we have that capacity and come back into a relationship with life. And if we can keep in our minds that all actions should create the conditions that support life, when we step out to see and understand something, and then when we come back in to act, we must integrate that understanding and action in a way that supports life. I think that is going to be revolutionary. That is going to open up vistas and possibilities we can't even begin to imagine. And that's why we're here, I believe, is to be able to do that. We've needed the experience, we've got the capacity, and now we need to bring that capacity back into service for life, not in service of losing life or getting rid of life or simplifying life. You can't simplify life, you kill it, because all of us are needed. So we can't get rid of the things that we don't like, get rid of the mosquitoes. Sorry about that. But maybe we can learn to manage them. Now, I know from my own experience that every living thing wants to be wanted. And if it's not wanted, it will go away. That's how I got rid of liver cancer, because I raised my vibration of my whole body to that of health. And that's a different vibration than cancer, which is not health. It's destroying the body. And it left, it disappeared. So when I had an operation to take out the tumor, there was no cancer in my liver. And I'd had a biopsy 18 months earlier where they found cancer in my liver. So it went away. I've done this with cockroaches. Yeah, it's true. You can do it with mosquitoes too, I'll bet you. If you're really clear, you don't want them around, they will disappear, but you got to be really clear. It's not talking at them. That won't do it. We are entering a whole new world. I truly believe that. And when we can resonate with the world and care about the world, love the world, love life in all of its mightiest forms, when we can do that, we will have a new world. We will create a world we can only dream of. Well, I don't even know that we can dream of it, frankly. I think it's so outside of what we're familiar with. It's going to be a revelation. But I think that's our work now, is to come back into sync with life and to create the conditions that support life. All our actions should create the conditions that support life. Talk to you in a couple of weeks.